everyone, welcome to another Underrated Film Saturday, and today I thought it would be interesting to briefly address a movie that is actually based upon a book that is based upon a true story that actually occurred, I believe, within the 90s. And that film, as you can see by the title, is Into the Wild. Now, basically the story revolves around a college graduate named Christopher, who, after he graduates, decides to kind of pack his bags and leave his family and ultimately go into the wild. And into the wild being ultimately Alaska. You'll see how he kind of just drifts around wherever, but his ultimate goal ends up being Alaska for some reason. But basically, this scenario itself offers a lot of interesting, I think, commentary as far as Christopher's behavior. The idea of him sort of leaving civilization and saying, screw society and meh, meh, meh. I find that there's a lot of things that I sort of disagree with him as far as, sort of like, because the film tries to present sort of his kind of philosophy and ideas. And although I do agree with him that, society isn't perfect, I mean, at the same time, I don't think it's bad either. I mean, I think there's a lot of shades of gray in there, and I think it is good to travel, and I think it is good to go out and see the world and, do all of those wonderful stuff. I mean, I think that's great. But I think that there is this part of him that just fully embraces that lifestyle instead of having kind of a balance. And I think the film really does kind of take more his side, especially with the visuals too. Like, they try to play up, oh, look at how pretty Alaska is, and oh, look at how awesome, he's going down a waterfall, and yeah, that's so cool, and he's meeting all these cool people, and yeah, and so I think there's part of the film that I think deters me from from the enjoyment of it, because unlike the book that kind of tries to take a more, warning, but at the same time understanding Christopher's understandings as to why he ultimately decides to make that choice and choose that lifestyle, it doesn't seem to offer that same balance in the movie. It seems to be more within his point of view, I think, which is probably what the film intended, considering the fact that, it probably didn't want to try to mimic the book. But on the one hand, I understand the idea of freedom, weights being lifted off your shoulders, all that stuff. But I think coming with that, there's a lot of responsibility. And I think ultimately towards the end of the film, I believe Christopher kind of might have realized this, that once you go in the wild, you pretty much are on your own and you gotta take care of yourself 24/7, and you could potentially die. So I think there is a sort of realization he comes to, sort of at the end of the film. But at the same time, I think through the majority of the film, we're seeing things through his point of view and through his sort of philosophy. And you kind of do see a little bit too of his family background and how it wasn't necessarily as rosy or stable, and that also, I think, significantly contributed to him wanting to leave the family. And you'll sort of see this within the film, because it does sort of showcase those elements. But I think overall its presentation is really well crafted. I mean, there is a sense of a likability to Christopher that they give. He seems to be very positive and upbeat about his whole like experience and all that. However, I think at the same time, I think he is a little bit too cynical towards other people. and their choices in life. So I think there's just that part that sort of rubs me the wrong way. That kind of deters me from really like getting into his character. Um, but I understand if there might be other people who feel differently. I'm personally more of the person who, I like society, I like civilization, but I love nature too. I mean, I think they can coexist just fine. I mean, we can have our nice parks with all of the animals running around, and we can have our nice cities where, people do productive work and accomplish a lot and, you know, build up civilization for people. Um, and in doing so might provide technology that maybe hence helps nature, you know. So again, I think there is this part of me that feels that I just feel like that civilization and nature can coexist, and I'm not one of those people who thinks we should abandon all of our our technology just for the sake of living in the woods and being a hippie. But if there's people out there who want to do that, more power to you. More power to you. And I can kind of understand ultimately why Christopher develops this kind of sort of extreme philosophy. You know, and again, it's more me having to do with me not really agreeing with him so much as I can understand where he's coming from. Like there's this empathy portion, but not necessarily sympathy. Because I mean, I know at the end, I mean, heck, what you did was, then that's it's probably gonna get you killed. I mean, if you go out and live in the woods and don't depend on anything, you're gonna have a hard time surviving. It'll be a lot like the cavemen. And trust me, the cavemen, they were troopers, man. And if you want to be one of those troopers, I mean, go for it. But um, I'm definitely not one of those cavemen. So, but I think ultimately, it is a well done film. I think it is a little bit overlooked because um, I don't think a lot of people really talk about this film all too much. I think the actors and actresses are not really well known, although Kristen Stewart was in this, but it was way before Twilight and way before she became popular. So I think it only makes sense that this film um, isn't as looked into probably. Although it has, I think, won some awards, it just kind of has, I think, faded over time, and people don't seem to, I think, remember it all too much. But I think it brings up a lot of interesting ideas, and although I don't agree with the main character all the time, I still think that there's a certain amount of empathy I can have towards him. Um, and there's a certain likability factor as well. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about the film without really giving so much away. Um, but yeah, if you enjoy these kinds of, nature, um, exploration adventure films, this is probably going to be up your alley. But if you are one of those people who is hardcore civilization and technology, you're probably not going to really care for, a guy who wants to go out and live in the woods and abandon society and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I think that's really ultimately all I can say in regards to this film. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.